I believe that was our bell, and they've turned on my mic, so it must have actually been the bell. All right, so I ended Sunday's class pretty abruptly, talking about the wave offering. We won't spend a lot of time here on page 152, but I do want to hit this concept here because of how important it is. We're on page 152. The heading is the Levites chosen for service. And you'll recall over in Numbers chapter 3, starting in verse 5, the Lord said to Moses, "Bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron the priest to assist him there to perform duties for him for the whole community." And if you recall this discussion, this is where the Lord gives to Aaron the Levites for service. And the point that I attempted to make at the end of class was, if we look over on, I think it's page 153, the ceremony for appointing the Levites to service, which began on page 152, is that you take them before the tent of meeting, you assemble the whole Israelite community, and then you perform these two sacrifices. The first one is this sprinkling with the water of cleansing. So there's a purification that is going to go on before they step into the service. This water for cleansing that is spoken of here, you may recall we talked on Sunday about the red heifer. Over in Leviticus chapter 19, the red heifer is a sacrifice that is made outside the camp. It is made outside the camp, and then the blood of this very special red heifer, who has never been yoked, who is without spot and blemish, all these requirements for this red heifer, is killed while the priest is looking on, but the priest doesn't do it. And then the blood of that animal is used to create water of purification. One thing I meant to mention on Sunday, what else happens outside the camp? I mean, this was the whole point I was driving to with our drawing up there in our concentric circles. What else happens outside the camp? Well, that's Hebrews 13:13, right? Let us go outside the camp with him, where that red heifer is sacrificed to create water of purification. Christ was crucified outside the camp, quite literally outside the city, but metaphorically, he was outside the camp. He came outside the camp to get those of us who are clean and bring us back in through that veil that was torn. So this water of cleansing is the water that is made with the sacrifice of that red heifer. And that's the first part of this ceremony. The continuation of this ceremony is that wave offering. So here we are, page 153. Aaron is to present the Levites before the Lord as a wave offering. So the Levites are presented as a sacrifice. You may be thinking, if you were thinking about people as sacrifices, of Romans chapter 12. We ought to be living sacrifices. That's what the Levites were. They were living sacrifices. Why were they chosen as living sacrifices? I know I'm bouncing back and forth on pages here. Back on page 152. Your heading there is the firstborn not chosen. The Lord also said to Moses, "I have taken the Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. The Levites are mine, for all the firstborn are mine. When I struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, I set apart for myself every firstborn in Israel." And if you recall your reading from this time frame, what's the word? A census. There is a census done of all of the firstborn in Israel. How many were there? Y'all didn't do your math, did you? There are 22,273 firstborn in Israel at the time of the census. How many Levites were there at the time of the census? There were 22,000 of them. And then if you recall your reading, that means, now you can do your math, how many firstborn didn't have an equivalent Levite? 273. So they have to make a payment for those 273. But the payment for the 22,000 Israelite firstborns is the Levites. Don't miss the substitution that's going on there. It's life for life. He spared the life of the Israelite firstborn, and what does he require in return? He requires life, and here what's he going to do with it? Is he going to cause these individuals to be sacrificed? Well, depends on what we mean by sacrifice. Wendy, thank you for doing your head like that. Yes, depends on what we mean by sacrifice. Does he require them to be killed? No. Does he require them to go in front of the altar and perform as a sacrifice? Absolutely. Just like, by the way, we are supposed to be living sacrifices. So that's why I wanted to get to the point of the wave offering, because what happens here on this page that we're looking at, or actually the next page, on page 153, is they are presented before the Lord as a wave offering, and that wave offering, if you recall in the last 20 seconds, we tend to think of the wave offering as, this, or I think one of my kids did, the wave at a football game. It's not this. It's not passing over. It's not a Passover, a passing over the altar. It is going forward towards the altar and then retracting from the altar. The motion there is symbolic of presenting the sacrifice to the Lord, and then what happens? Then you receive it back again. This is what happens to all of the physical materials that the Israelites gave for the tabernacle service. When they gave the bronze to create the bronze laver, and we hear about what the weight of that was presented as a wave offering. They gave it to the Lord gave it back to them. What were they supposed to do with it? Because it was a sacrifice and it had gone to the altar of sacrifice, what happens to it? What is its status then? It's considered holy. What does holy mean? Set apart. Set apart to whom? Set apart to the Lord. They've been sacrificed. The bronze was sacrificed. They receive it back from the Lord because it's a gift from the Lord. But for what purpose? For one and only one purpose, and no other purpose, and no other use. Only for His glory and His worship. And if you've gotten to the end of your reading for today, you'll see some more of that. We'll see again in today's reading that the priests get all of the wave offerings. Why is that? Because the priests are wholly dedicated to the Lord in all they are to do. And the Levites also, because they were the sacrifice, are to be wholly dedicated to the Lord after they've been purified. They are to come do the work at the tent of meeting. They are the wave sacrifice. So here is the big point that I want to make out of that. These Levites have no other purpose in life now than to be living sacrifices. They are set apart unto the Lord. If we want to put some tags on it, they are supposed to be all about stewardship. And the reason I go back to a February 4 reading is because that point is incredibly important for us to understand. These things that we're seeing in this reading are given to us for an example, the Scripture says, multiple times. Romans chapter 15 around verse 4. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, multiple times in the first 10 verses. These things are given as examples to us so we can see them and digest them and understand them. This is not just about Levites being living sacrifices and stewarding God's things. We are supposed to be a kingdom of priests. We should be all about stewardship. And It's simply a point that can't be overstated. I don't know, I mean, actually, we should write that up as one of our themes for the year. But even if we don't put that as a theme for our Bible reading, that should be our overarching personal theme. Every blessing that you've been given, every blessing that I've been given, every trauma that I deal with, every ability to understand what other people deal with, every position, place, whether I think it's good or bad, is a stewardship for me. That is our living sacrifice. I do want to make one point here for all of at least, I shouldn't limit it to the guys. For all of us out here, I don't know if any of you guys highlighted this right here, this age of duty thing. For the Levites, the Lord said to Moses, this applies to the Levites, men 25 years old or more shall come take part in the work at the tent of offering, but at the age of 50 they must retire. I don't want to focus on the retire part there. At the age of 25, they're supposed to be doing the primary work. At the age of 50, men can still be involved, but they are not supposed to be doing it primarily. They can assist, but they themselves must not do the work. If we need some personal application time, if you're in that age range and you are not deeply involved in the work, read that again. And I'll leave it for your study, because the Lord wants you to be a living sacrifice. All right, let's get to today's reading. Actually, that's not today's reading. Let's get to today's reading here. So we are, what are we on? Page 166. So let's just start with some brief, quick discussion of these trumpets here. The Lord said to Moses, make 2 trumpets of hammered silver, use them for calling the community together and having the camp set out. When are they to blow these trumpets? It's Wednesday. We really ought to be talking to one another. What's that? Okay, what we just read, when they're to gather together, when they're to move camp. Next paragraph, when do you blow trumpets? You're going to have to talk louder for me, I'm sorry. Okay. So you're focusing on, I don't want to scratch the word out, I want to highlight it. You're focusing on the word battle there, right? Yes, they are to blow it when they are in battle. Look specifically when they are supposed to start using them. When there's an enemy who is oppressing them. What do you need when an enemy is oppressing you? You need help. What are you doing with that trumpet? Are you telling all of your people who are sitting in the pew next to you, I need help? Well, they may be hearing it, but who are you talking to? You're blasting the trumpet, asking the Lord for help. When else do you send up a prayer with the trumpet? In times of rejoicing. All right? So, if this is an analogy for speaking to God emphatically, I would suggest it is, when ought you be in prayer? When you're oppressed or need help, and don't forget it, when everything's going great. And what is God doing with these trumpets? He's listening, right? I mean, what's he going to do? These things, it says, it will be a memorial for you before God. Does he need a reminder? No, this is the God who is always listening, right? This is the God who said in that tabernacle, if you remember our drawing, there's a table there. What's the table for? Table in the tabernacle. It's for the showbread. What's another term for showbread? Bread, I'm just scratching things out while I try to highlight, guys. I'm sorry. Bread of the presence. So, how many loaves are there? There are 12 loaves. What do they represent? The 12 tribes, i.e., the people, right? So how often is that bread in front of the Lord, according to what is written right after what I highlighted just there? Always. To always be before Him at all times. What is He saying with the structure of the tabernacle? I've got the lamp, which represents my spirit on one side. I've got the altar of incense, which represents prayers going up. And I've got the table, which is always before me with you guys. The lamp shining in that direction. He is always conscious of His people. That is the point of that. So the Lord doesn't need these reminders, these trumpets. Why do they need to blow them? Because God needs us to know we're communicating with Him. That's what prayer is. He knows what we need before we even ask it. He still wants us to do it. He wants man to remember Him and to seek Him. So let's take that away from the trumpets, and then let's... All right, so, this is the quickest you will ever have me pass a page in our... No, that wasn't the quickest. I'm going to pass page 167 quicker than you've ever seen me pass a page. One comment. It's not lies. In the middle of the page, what we're about to see, how long does it take? 3 days journey. Let's move on to the next page and see what happens. Record that in your calendars. All right. So here we are in our reading. What book are we in? We're in the book of Numbers now. Up until this point, up until chapter 11, what's the prevailing sentiment or the prevailing the rule for the relationship? How's the relationship with God going up until chapter 11? If we exclude Nadab and Abihu. All right, it's fine, it's good. In fact, I haven't bothered to count the number of times in the first 10 chapters of Numbers that it is said, and they did just as the Lord commanded. If you get to this point in the book of Numbers and you think, well, let's set aside Nadab and Abihu because that is a special story. You get to this point in the book of Numbers, everything looks like it's going swimmingly. It is in contrast to what's been happening over in the book of Exodus. So let's back up to the book of Exodus for a moment. Book of Exodus, they come out of the Red Sea, and how long is it before they have grumbling and complaining? The water is bitter. We don't have anything to eat. How long is it? It's 3 days. So Moses writing this book is talking to us about how these people have actually been focused on the Lord since they learned a lesson. And now, what are we going to have happen? 3 days after they start to move away from Sinai. What's going to happen? Chapter 11, verses 1 through 3. All right, we'll get to the rabble in a moment, actually. I'm glad you said that. So now the people complained about their hardships in the hearing of the Lord. Wait a minute. When is God listening? God is always listening. You better be careful if you start grumbling and complaining. He is always listening. And if you read folks who know the original language here, they'll say what this language means is they were talking as if they were people who had hardships. The sense being not they had something really to complain about, but they were acting like people who had something really to complain about. I mean, where are they? They're in the desert, right? It's not terribly comfortable. What should their situation with water be? They ought to be dehydrating. What should their situation with food be? They ought to be starving. To their minds, what are they going to be grumbling about here? Well, in this first paragraph here, what are they grumbling about? We don't even know. They're just grumbling because, life is so hard, is the sense that we get in this paragraph. Paragraph 2 on this page, what are they going to be grumbling about? Oh, this manna. I mean, we never see anything but this manna. Almost using manna as a curse word. They'd rather have a cucumber than manna. They just, what's their perspective? They've got a choice, right? They have a choice in their perspective, don't they? Their choice is this. Look at the fact that I've got water from the living rock, and I've got food that does what? that appears out of nowhere and is sweet, and God made it. How do we think this is? God made our bodies and God made the manna. Do you think that it's good for making a man fat and lazy? Do you think it's a Snickers bar? It's the perfect meal. Just like the bread of life is the perfect meal. Just like we don't live by bread alone, but by every word. The word is the perfect meal. What he's given them there is perfect in a drought-infested land of nothing good. And what are they looking at? I'm in a drought-infested land of nothing good. That's what they're seeing. They're not seeing, man, I'm in a drought-infested land of nothing good, and here I've got water and perfection. Their choice, the perspective to have. And they take the perspective of saying, if I see another flake of manna, I hope that it's easy for us to see how ridiculous and foolish that is. And let's go ahead and drive the point home here. That manna is God's gift and grace. And they are disrespecting His provision. They are disrespecting the perfect food that He's given. They say things like, we had food at no cost in Egypt. Well, first of all, how much is the manna costing them? And the food for no cost, how much did that fish cost them in Egypt? It cost them all their lives in terms of slavery. It cost them being subjected to the world, subjected to Pharaoh. They are tunnel visioned in the wrong direction, right? And that manna is so boring. That's the problem, right? The manna is so if I see enough, we have lost our appetite. All we ever see is the manna. Now, I hope we are all sitting here going, man, those ridiculous Israelites. How foolish. All right, do you ever find anything in our walk to be boring? Hey, I got teenagers. They miss out on a lot of the quote-unquote fun of the world. Right? Do we miss out on the fun of the world? Well, I wouldn't actually call it fun because I think we have matured to the point that we understand. But do they miss out on things of the world, things of Egypt? Well, I hope so. Is our walk boring? We do the same thing and we shun parts of the world. We don't engage in all of that. Word only, just the manna. It's not very exciting. It's not very exciting listening to this guy talk. And when Zach gets up here, Zach is not, sparkly and stuff. Man wants some variety, and we're not too far from wanting that. Just remember that the next time you think I'm weary and worn and threadbare and I feel like butter drawn across too much toast, realize you may be talking like an Israelite. And, oh my goodness, the Lord hears it. Whether you are blowing a trumpet or not, he hears it. All right, so Kelly, I think it was you who said the rabble. Let's notice this here at the outset. At the outset, we've got just the people complaining that, it's as if we had hardships. And then the rabble start up with this idea of we never see anything but this manna. And where does it go from the rabble? We started out with the rabble. What does that say to you? It's the group, but it doesn't sound like it's all of them, right? It's like the lower ends, the ne'er-do-wells. The ne'er-do-wells start saying some of this stuff. All right, so next paragraph. Who is it? There you go. That's the word that was going to come out of my mouth. It's infectious, right? Because here we start with this foul talk with the rabble, and where does it go from there? People of every family wailing at the entrance of their tents. Woe is me, this manna. And the Lord becomes exceedingly angry. And how does Moses react? Okay, all right, I like that answer. That's not the answer I was expecting. Moses prays. It's exactly what he does. And that is the point that we want to get to. I don't know who said it over here, but thank you for that. What's that? His prayer is kind of like a whine. Okay. That's the answer that I was looking for. Because as we read through this, who's complaining on this page? Well, the people are complaining, and the rabble's complaining, and now every tent is complaining, and now that they're complaining, who else is complaining? Moses is complaining. Did you read through Moses' complaints here and think to yourself maybe a little bit of, man, Moses is complaining a lot here. I mean, he's pretty forceful. Did I birth these people? Why did you put these people on me? Right? Now, I think Moses is still of the opinion that he's not the man for the job. So there is probably some of that there. Is the statement was Moses may be of the opinion that he's not the man for this job. Let me offer you something to consider on this very page and the one that follows here. We've got men complaining, aggrieved at the grace of God, and grace demands a response, but they've got the wrong response to it, right? They're not thankful, they're upset about it. We got men complaining about the grace of God. It's grace, but it's not what I want. And then you've got Moses complaining. Let's set back for a second. What's the difference between the two of them? To whom are the rabble and the people in every tent talking? They're talking to each other. The Lord overhears it, but are they blowing a trumpet up to the Lord? Are they saying, Lord, please give us some syrup with it? They're not. Right? That's not what the scripture says. They're grumbling. Just like they did 3 days after crossing through the sea. They're grumbling. We don't like it. Upset about it. They're talking about God and God's grace. What's Moses doing? Moses is blowing a trumpet. He's saying, I'm oppressed by these people. God, help me. I'm not worthy. I can't do it. Next page over, he's going to say, if this is what's going to happen, go ahead and let me die. Why? Why does he want to die? Do not let me face my own ruin. First of all, if I was a better manager of time, we'd be talking about Elijah, who also wanted to die. By the way, when Elijah said that there was nobody left but him, go ahead and take my life, what did the Lord do for him? who'd he give him? He gave him Elisha. He gave him help, and he put him back to work. What does God do with Moses here? He gives him help, and he says, stay and work. Get back to work. Because that's what he needs. Now, let's focus for a moment on this idea that he says, kill me and do not let me face my own ruin. What we know about Moses up to this point? What would Moses consider his ruin to be? That these people are upset with him? Is that his ruin? His ruin, I believe we see this in him now, right? His ruin would be failing in his stewardship. You see why I wanted to start with stewardship? His ruin would be failing in his stewardship for God. Go back and reread all of what he says here after class. He is not complaining to God, I don't want these people. He's complaining, these people are beyond my ability to do my stewardship for you. And I don't want to fail in that. So when he's praying because he's oppressed by the people he's supposed to be helping, he's not grumbling against God. He's saying, God, I want to do a good job. If I'm not going to do a good job, let me be done here. I don't want to see myself fail you. We haven't even gotten to the quail yet. All that's important stuff. So I hope you've read, because we're not going to be able to walk through all of what happens in our reading here. So in response to Moses' prayer, God says, I'm going to give you 70 people to help you out. And what? These people who've been crying for meat, what am I going to do for them? I'm going to give them what they want. And so let's just make sure that we get that contrast down. What had he been giving them that they hated? He'd been giving them manna, which was what for them? It was perfect. It was good. It was life for them. It was absolutely what they needed. What were they asking for? Snickers. Anything different. Variety. They wanted meat. And so now he's going to give them what they asked for, and we're going to find out, is it what they needed? No. When they get what they want in rejection of what God wants, it's going to come upon them, and it's going to be like a plague to them, right? But more important than all of that is the way God sees what they've been doing. So as he says, as he's telling Moses here in verse 18, what to tell the people, first of all, he says, consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow. That ought to be a big notice. Y'all get ready. You better be holy, because something's going to happen. What's going to happen to some of these folks? What's going to happen to them? Some of them are not going to survive, right? I sure hope they consecrated themselves unto the Lord. How does God feel about this begging for meat and this looking at the manna that he has provided for them miraculously and saying, I can't even stand that stuff? How does God feel about that relationship? That's it. That's the key right there. You have rejected the Lord. Because who is in control? Well, he's been in control of everything and given them good. Who do they want to be in control? They want to be in control. And we know it doesn't turn out very well for them. And it's called, what was the name of the place here? The Graves of Craving? All right, let's turn over to page 170. And I'm actually really glad that we've had all of this reading together here. So if if the despising the manna and wanting all this variety in the food was over in 1 John chapter 2, what would we call it? The lust of the... We'd call that lust of the flesh. All right, we got another story coming on here. This was the rabble and the people who were lusting after the flesh. And now, who are we going to deal with? We're going to deal with Miriam. What is Miriam's position? Miriam and Aaron, but Miriam's the antagonist here. Huh? She's a prophet, right? And so Miriam and Aaron begin talking against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. But then here's the real point they make. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses, they asked. Hasn't he also spoken through us? Did the Lord hear it? Were they trying to say that to the Lord? The Lord is always listening, right? Even when you don't intend to talk to him. Their complaint is this: we come from the same womb. We're just as special. In fact, the Lord talks to us. Who's Aaron? Aaron's the high priest. Who's Miriam? She is a prophet. If we need to turn there, I'll show you where Scripture calls her a prophetess. We've actually already read it together. When the Lord gave Moses to the people, who did he also give according to Scripture? Not just Aaron. Micah 6:4. I sent Moses to lead you, also Aaron and Miriam. I should highlight that for you. Sorry about that. So were they specially installed by God? Yeah. So indeed, Aaron's the high priest, Miriam's a prophet. God has equipped the Israelites with all three of them. And who's not satisfied? Aaron and Miriam. So let's make sure that we get this point right here. Aaron and Miriam, and we're going to see this with Korah. You read this with Korah, right? Oh, let's just go there. Because this is such an important point. Over on page 175, when I forget where I came from when we finish this little paragraph here, tell me that I was talking about Miriam. Over on page 175, when Korah says, you've gone and taken too much on yourself, why do you set yourselves above the Lord's assembly? The whole community is holy, every one of them. Moses looks at Korah and says, here we are in Moses rebukes Korah. Now listen, you Levites, isn't it enough for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the rest of the Israelite community, brought you near to himself to do the work of the Lord's tabernacle, and to stand before the community and minister to them? We've got, he separated them from the people. He's brought them near himself. He now has the work of the Lord, and he's got the work of serving his brethren. Do we see Korah thrilled to be in service? I mean, this what what Moses is saying here is, focus on how blessed you've been. Just like those people who didn't like the manna. Why are you trying to grab for more when the Lord has given you all the blessing that a man could ask? And what are the blessings? I mean, He separated you. He's made you holy unto Him. He's set you apart. He's drawn you near. We've talked a lot about being drawn near in the book of Hebrews. And do not miss this point. Two of His greatest blessings, that He does work for the Lord and He does work for the Lord's people. Paul will say in Ephesians, I think it's 3, unto me was this grace given to teach to the Gentiles. Grace is not just getting something for free. Doing work for the Lord, doing work for the Lord's people, it's grace to be allowed to be in that position with who we are. We are no one to stand and speak his name even. And Korah's lost sight of that, and who does he want to be in charge? Look, there's a huge issue here that I really want to go down this trail, but somehow that was the first bell, right? I mean, what's Korah's problem? If there was one word that Korah has a problem with, what is it? Okay, that was a really bad question, because you're all right. I mean, it's self-centeredness, it's jealousy, it's pride, oh, by the way, that's where I was going with this pride of life when I was talking about 1 John 2. So you have the manna, lust of the flesh, pride of life going on with Aaron and Miriam and with Korah here. In a word, Korah's real problem is one with authority. He does not like the way the chain of authority goes. He does not like the role that was assigned to him because he wants to be somewhere else. And he's gathered up 250 people to elect him duly to change the lines of authority. And that is our challenge in America. If nowhere else, that is a huge challenge. I know there was a time when I was much younger that there was a lot of teaching on authority, but boy, it's not teaching that we've overdone. If we don't do something, it's because we don't have authority for it. If we don't coordinate in a structured relationship with other congregations, it's because we don't have authority for it. If I look weird to somebody out in the world, why is it? Not because I'm doing what I want to do. If I'm doing what I want to do, I'm going to be eating cucumbers with them. Not cucumbers, but the other stuff. I'm going to be like them if I'm doing what I want to do. The reason I am a peculiar person, borrowing from the King James language, you are his own peculiar people, because I'm just trying to do what he says. And that is what should define us. That was really the first bell. Okay, so in 3 minutes, we're going to go through this reference to Moses as a prophet, an antitype. We're going to go through the spies. We can't do it. Here's what I want to do. If some of y'all have been in classes with me before, and you know this is one of my soapboxes, but we're going to get on a soapbox for a moment. If I can find the right page. Wow, I want to talk about that page. Here we go. Page 173. We are going to talk about the spies for like a minute and a half. So the spies go into the land. Guess what? Just like those people with the manna, those spies have a choice. The choice here is exemplified, is in an example, we have 2 out of 10 that choose what? They choose faith. So their potential reactions upon walking into that land. By the way, what was the command when they were to go in the land? It was to spy it out and to see what it's like. And what we're told here is to find the best route in, right? And so they come out, and what's the report they give? The report they give is, indeed, it's a land flowing with milk and honey. But they're big people there. And they start talking about how hard it's going to be. Was the command, go in and see if you think you can take it? Was the command, go in and figure out the strategy for beating those people? No. The command was, go look at it to see if it's good. What are you going to find out? Because God laid out the plan for you. What are you going to find out when you go in there? It's good, and guess what? The people who live there, yeah, they're going to grow big and strong. Why? Because God's prepared the land for his people. They should have been looking at it and going, this is the promised land. Instead, they said, these are big people. And Few are the way that find it, right? I mean, you've got two of them that choose option B, which should have been A. Two of them say, I mean, what actually are Caleb's words? We should go in the land and take possession. Is he saying we should go in and fight and beat them? I don't know how many of you guys have bought a house, but when you buy a house, you have legal title to it, and then there is a day that you quote unquote take possession. That's the language that Caleb uses. He says, let's just march in and take it because we own it. I'm not fighting for it. I'm just going to take it because God gave it to me. But these others want to walk by sight and not faith, and they get lost. And here, I know that was the bell, but this is one of my soapboxes. I can't let it pass by. We're over in Numbers chapter 14, and I hope it's up on the screen there. How does God see this? The glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the Israelites, and the Lord said to Moses, how long will these people treat me with contempt? My version says, how long will these people despise me? That's pretty strong, whichever translation you want to use. God saw them looking at big, strong people and saying, that's scary. And he said, you're despising me. You're showing me contempt. Why? It's right there. Because they don't believe in me. Did they know God existed? Did they believe God existed? Absolutely. I mean, Miriam says, hey, we're the Lord's people too. Korah says, hey, we're the Lord's people too. They absolutely believe. I'm calming down. I'm sorry. They absolutely believe he existed. What did we say the first time we talked about that word faith in this class? Faith's real intellectual baggage, the real meaning of it is trust. They despise him because they don't trust him even though he's shown them adequate reasons. Take that home with you because he's shown us adequate reasons in the resurrection from the dead that he foretold in his true prophet that was like Moses, but so much better. There's an hour more to talk about that. But take that and run with it. Do not lose trust in God at risk of having him look at you and say, you remember our phrase, let him do the work, you do the walk. That's all he's asking of him. That's what Caleb understood. All I got to do is walk in there, take it. Do the work and do the walk. Let him do the work. If you don't do that, he's going to look at you and you potentially may hear him say, why did you despise me? Even if you didn't think you were. We'll end on that note. Thank y'all.